Hi, I'm Julie Hornock, and you have joined us on the United in Autism little podcast that we're doing. Is it called a podcast? Videocast? Whatever it is. Webcast. There you go.
Not sure.
This is MariAnn Gattelaro. I'm absolutely thrilled. Thank you for coming. And
thanks for having me.
Really, technically, I came to you, right?
Kind of. That's okay. Happy to be here.
Well, I'm so excited about 5 Sense Learning. And I cannot wait to share it, especially because I know a lot of moms and dads have kids that are really, really hard to teach. And it doesn't seem like the traditional methods are working. And just to start off, the United in Autism, the book that's coming out that I wrote, it has 30 stories of 30 families from all around the world with autism. And the main theme of this is that we cannot stay in isolation. We cannot stay and not reach out to other parents, because you feel so awful when you think you're going through it. And one of the parents said, I thought I was the only one going through this in my house, and I met all these people and I realized it's the exact same. And so I think it's so important to reach out. And the reason I'm saying this is because this is my friend MariAnn, and she is one of the people I reach out to whenever I'm freaking out, basically. And I think you and I both have kind of done that.
Yes.
Yeah, we've supported each other in this journey, and we've met many years ago, like 5 or 6 or 7 maybe.
I think longer than that.
Yeah.
So
our kids are both the same age.
Ago, I think.
Yeah, about 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. But it's just so incredibly important to have a friend you can call when everything is going downhill and you're about to lose it. And MariAnn's been
I think we've been each other's strength at different times. On different occasions, and it was really just what helped us learn and pull through and surmount all the barriers that we come across with autism.
Yeah. So I just want to encourage you, if you're a parent that's watching this and you do feel isolated, reach out to your area. You can even Google autism and type in your town that you're in, and I bet something pops up. If not, find an online. There's tons and tons of online groups. At first, we used to never ever get together, and we were always online because we couldn't leave because it was all therapy all the time. So reach out and try and find other people going through the same thing so you don't feel as isolated. With that said, so MariAnn is a counselor, a licensed counselor, and I want you to kind of share a little bit about what you do.
Okay, I before autism came into my life, I actually became a school counselor and a rehabilitation counselor. And lots of people don't know what a rehabilitation counselor is. Sometimes they think about drug and alcohol rehabilitation, and that is one aspect. But really, my fascination was in reference to disability. So really being a school counselor for students who have different types of disabilities, whether it be blindness or deafness or autism or some type of learning difference like dyslexia or attention deficit disorder or bipolar disorder, depression. So my specification in counseling became rehabilitation counseling. So how do I get this person who has this difference to get from this point to this point? What can I do? And so I became a hub of, for that family to provide referrals to the right resources for those families to get comprehensive care. So that was what I began doing many years ago. And then I had a son who was diagnosed with autism, and that really led me to have a vested interest in treating autism. I think when your child is diagnosed with any type of disability, as a parent, you start researching, you start trying to find cures and treatments. And it was really difficult because with autism, there wasn't a cure. And that led me to just research harder, dig deeper to try. There must be an answer. There must be something to help. And that led me to reading different books and traveling to different places and meeting moms like you and others who might have found treatments to help their children learn. What I found through this, and really as my son being the teacher, is that some types of teaching he wasn't responding to, and I didn't understand why, because the books that I had read said, this type of treatment, kids progress at a significantally great rate, and mine wasn't. And I want to
also just preface this with, I know your son, and he's a tough kid. From the beginning, safety was always an issue. So you've dealt with a lot of the problems that I consider to be tough, like where you're always having to watch your kid, which then that does a number on us as parents when there's no break at all. But
right.
I mean, his speech was really, really hard. I know that. Does he have apraxia? I can't remember.
He does.
He also has apraxia. And let me just tell you, she's going to share this 5 Sense Learning with you, but her son has come so far, and his socialization has come so far too, because he's interested in the world, and what you're doing is getting him interested. And the funniest thing happened just the other day where it was like 8 o'clock at night and my phone rang and I'm like, oh, MariAnn's calling me. Something must be wrong. No one calls you at 8 o'clock at night. Not that that's late.
It's a rule.
It's a rule.
It's a mom rule.
Well, you're just busy, And I thought, oh no. And I get on, I answer the phone and I'm like, hello. And he's like, hey, Julie. And then he wants to talk about like Ford Focuses.
Well, I think last time he saw you, you started talking about cars, and he really wants to drive at some point, which unfortunately I don't think that's going to happen, but I do never say never.
Yeah, never say
and
never.
I definitely don't want him to think that way, but he was talking to you about cars, and so that was months and months prior to this phone call, but he knew exactly where he left off with Julie, and he wanted to continue
We had
the
to finish that conversation, but I just loved that he had the ability. He looked at your phone, he called me, he knew who he was calling, he knew our conversation, and then we could sit there and chat.
Yeah.
And then he wanted to talk to my daughter, which was even cuter.
That's funny.
Yeah. So, all right, well, let's kind of just start in with what in the world is 5 Sense Learning?
Yeah.
5 Sense Thinking.
5 Sense Thinking, I developed a little presentation with a little sense sign, but it actually has to do with the sensory system and how people process information and learn information. I really became very interested in how people learn and started studying learning theory from the days of like Aristotle and Aquinas. How people learn intrigued me because I thought, well, my child learns differently, but there is a common way that people learn. How do people learn? I came across a learning pyramid, which I kept researching, and then everything just kept pointing to this learning pyramid, and it just talked about acquisition rates and learning. I'm not sure if you could see that.
Yeah, you know what? I'll put it up. I'll take a picture and I'll put it in the comments because it'll show backwards.
So basically, the top of this pyramid talks about basically the lowest acquisition rate in learning would be just lecturing, just teaching through maybe rote memorization tactics. Like, I'm going to show you a picture, you're going to reiterate what it is, you're going to memorize it. So, and that leads to a low acquisition rate because we truly don't develop an understanding of what we're learning. I could show you a picture of anything, you'll have no idea, like a black dot with squiggly lines around it. I could put a name to that. And you can learn it. You can learn that name, and every time I show you that picture with the black squiggly lines, you're going to be able to regurgitate the name that I taught you. But you truly won't understand it or won't know what it is or what it's used for. What I found with my son is we continued to teach him words, but words that weren't applicable to his everyday life, and he continued to learn just words, and he wasn't really progressing other than the rate of how many words that he learned. He wasn't using them in conversation and speech, and I asked myself why is that? What I came to the conclusion and understanding is that people learn best by not just reading and memorizing, but actually by doing and applying what they learn, and then eventually teaching others. The highest acquisition rate comes from when we're able to show others how to do something. Then we've truly demonstrated the knowledge of understanding. And so I thought, how am I going to teach my son to understand? I think his name's Arnheim, forgive me if that's wrong, but he said experiences deposit images. There's 2 types of imagery. When we read, for example, symbolic imagery, which is more of your memorization of I'm thinking of autism. You drive by the Walmart, they know it's Walmart because they see that symbol and that's the store. And then there's concept imagery. It's really understanding what's within a picture, the context around a picture, being able to apply that picture or that word to your life in some way. And that type of imagery leads to meaningful knowledge. And a lot of that imagery comes from our own experiences. So how am I going to get my child to experience what he's learning? And that incorporates and involves your sensory system. I remember them trying to teach him because they called them tacks, and tacks is basically labels of words or things that he's learning. So a ball, this is a ball, and this is a crayon, and this is a water bottle. Well, he had over 100 words that he's learned on pictures, and they were struggling to find some other labels, and they took a picture of an outlet and a car engine, and these were more abstract, especially for a 3 and a 4-year-old. But I thought, an engine, he knows that thing that he sees in that picture is an engine, but how does he know what it does? If we go out and we turn our car on, and if I tell you guys to think about an engine right now, I bet you could smell the exhaust. I bet you, if you could you could visualize putting your hand upon that engine, and you could tell me right now whether it's hot or cold based on whether the car is on or off. Okay. I bet you if I say the word engine or show you a picture of an engine, you can hear it. So really, learning and understanding involves experiencing. We wouldn't know what it smells like or what it feels like or what it sounds like unless we were there experiencing that word. And that kind of triggered an idea. It's thematic learning. We're going to learn through our experiences. Today we're going to learn about farm animals, but the way we're going to learn about farm animals is we're going to go to the zoo, and we're going to learn about each one, and I'm going to point out the colors and the sounds, and then we're going to come back and look at those animals on picture cards and see if the acquisition rate, number 1, goes up, and 2, the maintenance, they call it, and really being able to identify those aspects of what you learned over time stay with him. And I come to find out that he learned at a greater rate when doing it this way, and he remembered what he learned more, and he actually learned through it.
One of the things I learned through when our kids are reading, they don't picture like we picture. So this kind of goes along with that same idea of thinking when you're trying to understand the brain of a person with autism, is if they're thinking in pictures, you have to create those pictures for them, or they have to experience it. They can't just come up with it.
Right.
And so we can maybe picture and put pieces of what we know together, but they're not necessarily doing that. And so to help them do that, then you're experiencing it instead. And maybe that's why social stories work so well too with the kids.
True. Well, there's different components, and they call it multisensory teaching, and really 5-sense thinking aligns with multisensory teaching in the sense that you're using the different senses to teach a subject or a topic. And that leads to more comprehensive knowledge, but it not only leads to better reading comprehension, but language comprehension as well. And I think that it actually produces more language in our children incidentally. It also incidentally increased my child's social skills through these experiences. So there's a lot that's unsaid when teaching a different way that can lead to other areas of benefit for kids on the spectrum.
When they're experiencing it, it's perking their interest too, because it's not just that road. Like they're going to find something they're interested in that environment.
And sometimes motivation doesn't have to be contrived. It's actually natural, and I think easier for teachers to teach when there's natural motivation or willingness to learn a specific subject or topic.
Yeah.
If you make it fun, children will engage.
So can you take us through you talked about the car engine and how you would do that, but give me another scenario of something maybe a child is having trouble learning, and then how you would do it differently.
Sure.
Show me the parallels of this is how we normally teach it, and this is how we are going to teach it, going through all the senses.
Okay, sure. I think I'll start with trying to teach you.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
Okay.
So what I would do is I'm going to show you a picture, and I don't know if you could see it, but it's a picture of a rose.
Okay.
And so I'm going to show you that picture of a rose, and I'm going to ask you to identify it. What is it?
It's a rose.
Okay, and tell me about this rose.
It's red, and it's sitting on some wood planks, maybe a deck, and it has leaves that are starting to kind of crumble a little bit, and they aren't as bright green as I would have thought. They're more kind of gray.
What does this make you think about?
Gosh. I don't even... Oh, that's tough. I'm so on the spot. I mean, I think it makes me think of like different book covers that I've seen roses on.
Okay.
different, yeah, and like there's experiences I have had in the past where I've gotten roses, but a single rose just feels different for some reason than it.
I think that every time I ask this question, I get a very unique response, and that's very personal to the individual that I'm talking to. Sometimes a kid with autism will see this rose and only be able to visualize this rose,
right,
and not have anything else to reference to. But as I show you these pictures, this is a rose. It's a rose in a garden.
Okay.
And that might elicit a feeling. And this is a rose, shared by two little monkeys there.
Oh, yeah, that's
See,
cute.
that's a rose. But this is a rose.
Okay.
And I know that elicits some feelings or memories in some people. But this is also a rose. So to understand that a rose is much more than just the picture of a rose, that it can have symbolic meaning, it can have conceptual meaning, really based on the context that it's put in. And to understand that if I need to teach this child what a rose is, I can't just teach it to this child in one context. I have to take the child through different contexts in which they would see a rose. So we're going to go to the rose garden. We're going to show you pictures or videos on how roses are placed on coffins or in a cemetery. I'm going to show you how the meaning of a rose changes when a man gives it to a woman on a romantic date. That a rose can mean different things based on its context. And that's truly understanding the different meanings of a rose. And so really taking the child through all of these different scenarios in which they would experience a rose are important, because you or I may have incidentally come across these experiences in our life and paid attention to them, whereas our children may not have come across those or paid attention to those, even when they've come across those specific situations. So making sure that you take your child through those experiences, whether it be in real life or on video. I think it's important to teach them the different contexts of a specific symbol, topic, or situation when you're teaching it. The same thing with water. Water is a very general topic. I could show you a picture of water, and some people might think about the beach, right? Or maybe that person is thirsty that day and they're thinking of a bottle of Evian, for example, right? But water doesn't necessarily have to be that blue, beautiful ocean. It could be murky water that's dark and black, or it could be thirsty, for example, just to give you that idea. It doesn't necessarily mean someone drinking an Evian, but understanding that thirst has different measures, that the word thirsty could mean genuinely thirsty, parched, not having drank something for days, or it could mean you're working out and you happen to be thirsty. Just the one word could have so many different levels of meaning, and to take the child through those levels, whether in real life or on video or in pictures, are important so they can understand the depth of the meaning of that word. So language is very powerful. Words are very powerful because of the depth of their meaning. And I feel that sometimes the way we teach our students and our children, it's very, very much at a superficial level, and it's not leading them to create that deeper meaning.
Yeah, you just expect they're going to get all of that, but they don't.
Right, they don't.
And so you go, and I like the idea of water because it's just, you can go and you can do so much with that. You can do canoeing.
Well, and water, I mean, I'm going to teach about water today. You could teach about water all month.
Yeah, you really could.
You could teach about, if you truly want to teach about water, it will take you at least a month.
Yeah.
Because there are so many different types of water, and experiences that people could have with water. Think about the auditory system alone. If we close our eyes and listen, we know the difference between a rain shower and someone pouring a glass of water, because we can isolate our senses and identify our vision. We can identify temperature just through the one sense of sound.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And so, really isolating those specific senses to create meaning is very important. And I think that it's important to do with our kids. Isolate their senses. See if they can identify water just from sound. And then you know that they're starting to gain an understanding. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and you can also, with water, you can always teach safety too.
And you can teach,
you can add that
there's
in,
so many
that's
different things you can teach about that. So I think we're trying to create learning through understanding, and I think there's a very distinct difference in learning and understanding. We always want to teach so that way we can answer the why questions. Why, as adults, why are we using this specific treatment and not this specific treatment? Why is this better than this? Why are we choosing to take a stand on this topic and not this topic? We can answer those questions because we understand. Okay, but we can't answer those why questions if we don't understand. Like I'm not a physician. I don't understand about how to perform surgery, for example, but I can read an article on it, probably take a multiple choice test and do relatively okay. But if someone asked me about the gamma knife, and that's, I know a gamma knife is a radioactive device to treat tumors, I think. But if they asked me why is the gamma knife better at taking out tumors than other devices, I couldn't answer that. So I really don't have a true understanding of the topic. Yeah. But if you ask me about something I know about crafting or something like that, I can sit there and talk to you about it. I can debate with you over it because I have an understanding.
So what about, like, let's take a parent that's watching this today and they think, okay, I have got to add this in. I absolutely just have to add this into our programming. We already have ABA, we have school, so how do you suggest kind of getting started? Like maybe on the weekends?
Well, and I think that it can be incorporated into an ABA program or even in school. I think it's just the method of how we instruct. I think that the person who's, really designing programming and curriculums can really take that and use a lesson planner that incorporates experiential learning. The state of Texas has a lesson plan on their TEAC's website. I think it's right there on the website. It's called the 5 E's.
Okay.
And I know some of them, but engage. You want to engage the child. Very important because that leads to that willingness to learn.
So if we're doing like a lesson on circles, you find something that's a circle that they're interested in. That would be the engagement.
Right. Or you say, hey, we're going to learn how to throw a ball using no hands today. That's going to be so much fun. So I have no idea that you can actually do that, but you're going to engage them. And your child, can be engaged in different ways than another child. Right. So you might be able to say something off the wall like that, or show them this powerful clip of a video. Look how cool that is. We're going to learn how to do that today. So you have to create that initial, oh, this is cool. You want to engage them. You want to connect with them on this topic that you're trying to teach. And then I know it's explore. You want to explore the topic. So you want to create a lesson plan that has them involved in their learning by doing something. So we're going to, learn calculus today, but we're going to apply it to build an airplane wing, for example, and we're going to build this actual airplane wing. So they're exploring while they're learning, and then you're going to expand on the topic. So now that we've learned these equations, now we're going to talk about how we've applied it in this particular project, and we're going to expand on our knowledge. That why did we use this equation versus this? And I don't know why I came up with math, because that's my worst subject. But we're going to talk about the different algorithms and why we chose this one, for example. But you want to expand on that knowledge now that you've explored, and then you want to you want them to explain. You want them to explain what they did, why they did it, why it was effective or not effective, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't remember the last E, but I know that that at that final moment, then you assess or you test their knowledge at that point after they've gone through all of these series.
And is that explaining a little bit like the teaching, because you were talking about before, the highest level?
It's kind of like teaching others, yes. So that explain is at that level of teaching others that leads to that higher acquisition rate. But a teacher can incorporate the same lesson plan that she has designed using a 5E model, for example. An ABA therapist or a board certified behavioral analyst could take their objectives and their targets and use the 5 senses to teach that particular target.
Or if you look at your child's targets and you see them in the ABA, people won't just assume they won't do it, then you can do that. You can do it. Find out what their targets are, and then you can give them the 5 senses learning at home.
Right.
After therapy.
Isolate their senses. Take them to the zoo, to the grocery store, wherever you need to be.
Experiment to do, just to do not tell them you're doing that, and just see if they're like, oh my goodness, they're learning so well.
If their acquisition rates are higher that way, yes.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
And then, really, once you feel like the child understands that particular topic, right, you start asking them questions, especially if they're verbal. If they're not, you can use a receptive identifier. But what do you think is going to happen next? If I do this, what do you think will happen next? That really helps stimulate their thinking, their predicting an outcome, for example, on what might happen next. I also, with my own child, when he was younger, we used to have him act out some of the things that he's learned and pretend.
I love that.
He was learning about different foods, for example. Okay, pretend you're eating healthy food. Now pretend you're eating not healthy food. And we would have him act out those scenarios, which actually led to the first treatment that was unintentional to teach pretend play actually taught pretend play.
Yeah.
Because every program prior to that wasn't clicking.
Yeah.
So, but finally, we went to the zoo and he experienced the zoo. Pretend we're at the zoo. Well, we were just there, so he has all these sensory experiences now.
Yeah, and you can bring that play in and your play sets at home, and
right, and then that is actually what made the connections happen for him. Is we just experienced it. Now we're going to pretend that, versus trying to get him to pretend something that he's never experienced before. It was very difficult for him.
Well, and once they learn that to pretend after they've experienced it, that's also very helpful for learning things about their day, because I remember, Lizzie, when she learned how to do that, she would come home and she would do pretend and show, basically, I would ask her about her day and she wouldn't be able to answer, but she would show me, because all of a sudden she was doing it with her little figures. And so I would learn if a teacher had yelled at her, or I would learn all the different things that happened in the day only because she was doing it in her pretend play. So that's another really neat.
Because that's what she knows,
Yeah,
so
and she's going through it again and experiencing it again, which
sometimes we don't think about that, but I think that for our children, it really helps for them to recreate scenarios that they've experienced.
Yeah, well, and Lizzie is fortunate enough to go to a school that does some of this, and they incorporate, especially in the younger years, they incorporate a lot of this in. And one of the examples that I just saw, just huge acquisition rate for her skills, was, so they were in Texas history and they learned all about Texas history in their books, but then they would always do a hands-on project, and then they went and did Texas history. They literally took a trip to San Antonio. They did the Alamo, they did the caves on the way, they did all kinds of stuff, and it was just incredible because she came home and she knew like just hordes of information, and so it was pretty incredible to watch the rate.
Yes, I think that again they did it right. So they actually took what she learned, and she was able to apply that in vivo in the moment, and experience that. So it probably helped her appreciate what she was seeing more. Yeah. Or even if you go back and read it after you've been there.
Yeah, if they go back and read it,
and they go back and read it again, sometimes she'll start to absorb those sensory experiences. Now I know what the Alamo feels like, what the rock feels like, what it looks like. And that can also be very helpful, I think, for any of us, as a mode of learning.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing this.
Thank you.
Can I put the pyramid in the comments below?
Yes.
And I've seen that there's lots of comments and questions, and so MariAnn said she'll answer questions, and I'll tag her on those. So if you have questions, please just ask them. And yeah, hopefully, I hope that some kids will start learning a little bit more. So thank you for joining us, and thank you so much, MariAnn.
Thanks, Julie.
We appreciate you. So
thanks.
Y'all have a good day.